Hi, and thank you for joining me on Dishing with me, Heather D. And today I got a special treat for you. I will be showing how I make my sour cream and lemon and blueberry pound cake. Now this was not only a request, but I had a customer that wanted this cake. So I figured this is a perfect opportunity for me to record and show you guys how I make this delicious dessert. Now, disclaimer, ignore this satin bonnet that's on my head. The reason why I have it is because anytime I'm preparing meals or any type of dessert or something that's going to be for other people other than my family, I usually like to try to wear either a net or some type of hair covering along with the apron for safety purposes. I don't want to take any chances of my hair getting into the food that I prepare for others. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed this video and see how I put this all together. It is going to be so good and well worth it and definite crowd pleaser. Alright, so our recipe is going to start out by us preheating our oven at 325 degrees Fahrenheit. I have my washed blueberries, of course, our spray for our baking pans, butter, lemons, eggs. We have, and these are all room temperature. We have our sour cream. I have my vanilla extract, my lemon extract, which I got from Gordon's because lemon seems to be a very popular flavor in our pastry world. We have cake flour that is unbleached, salt, baking powder, sugar, and this recipe and all its ingredients will be located in the description box below. So we're going to start out by, as you can see, I have my apron on and we are getting our ingredients together. But unfortunately, first I received a phone call and I had to answer real quick. So after I got that call and washed my hands, we started over and we have our lemons. So right now I am zesting the outside of a lemon. You want to make sure that your lemons are good and clean and washed and that they're pretty juicy. And I did a little bit of the rolling and the squeeze method. I zested both lemons because my lemons were pretty like small or medium size. I wanted to get as much zest as possible, so I transferred them into that small container, and then I'm going to also juice them. So make sure you zest your lemons first, then juice them. You can't zest your lemons after you have juiced them because it is going to be very hard to try to get all that goodness on the from them. So I'm just squeezing them out, as you can see right here. And once I squeeze all the juice out of the lemons, this is going to be split two ways. I'm going to use part of that lemon juice for the cake and part of it will be going toward the glaze. So I set that aside and I'm preparing my ingredients for the cake. So I have my 2 unsalted room temperature butters. They're going to be really soft, so you're going to go ahead and place them inside of your mixing bowl. You can use a stand mixer if you want, or you can use your elbow grease if you don't have neither stand mixer or hand mixer. I'm going to also incorporate 3 cups of sugar. Now, like I said, the ingredients in what you want to do is make sure you don't skimp on the sugar. Do not try to do 2 cups of sugar because it will cause the cake to not taste right. I tried it when I first did this recipe and it did not work out well. So you want to make sure you use your 3 cups of sugar. We're using 1 cup of sour cream, so you definitely want to make sure you use 3 cups of sugar in this. And I just went ahead and made sure that I used all the sugar that I had in my bowl there. And you want to make sure you level it off as much as possible before you add it into there. And the butter and the sugar is going to cream together really well before you add any other ingredients. It's going to have almost like a pasty type consistency like you would use for plaster in your bathroom or whatever you use in your arts and craft world. We're going to also add eggs one at a time, and these of course are room temperature. You want to incorporate these one at a time because you want to make sure that the eggs are well blended in with the sugar and the butter. And I have this at a low speed and I'm just mixing this all up. And after all of the eggs are added, they are going to be well blended, and you want to make sure that you have a very good spatula to push down and scrape your sides down of your bowl. You want to scrape the sides down because you want to make sure that the eggs are well incorporated. And as you can see, this is what it looks like. It's becoming fluffy from the eggs and the sugar and the butter mixture. Now, the best thing for you to do is not do what I did and trying to scrape the bowl down with the beater going. So I did end up turning my beater off and scraping the bowl down and making sure that I got everything down at the bottom so that that beater can mix all the ingredients in together really well. Now, as you can see, I'm about to add in my flavors. I have my pure vanilla extract here, and I have a half teaspoon that I'm using, but you want to add 1 teaspoon. Or if you want more of the lemon flavor, then you could go ahead and just use the half teaspoon. But I'm using 1 teaspoon of the vanilla extract. And I'm also going to add some of my lemon flavoring. Yes, you want to add your lemon flavoring. This is going to enhance that lemon juice once we add this. And I'm only using about a half a teaspoon because you don't want it too lemony. And of course, it depends on your taste buds. If you want more lemon flavor, then you can. But I'm only using a half a teaspoon. Of course, most of it dripped out, so I didn't have to fill up my little spoon as much. I'm closing up all my ingredients as I go through so I know I don't have to use them again. And then I'm going to go ahead and pour that in and mix my mixer, all the ingredients up together really well. Now I'm adding some of the zest. I'm only going to add about 1 teaspoon of the zest in this mixture. Like I said, we're going to use some of that zest and some of the juice in both the cake as well as the glaze. And you want to make sure that all these flavors are well incorporated into your cake. So I'm mixing that all up together. And I'm going to prepare and getting my flour. Now I am using unbleached flour. And this is King Arthur. Now you can use all-purpose flour if you want, if you can't get the King Arthur unbleached flour, but this cake flour is very good. It's light, it's airy. You really don't have to do much sifting. But like I said, if you can't get the King Arthur, you could go ahead and use all-purpose flour. You just want to make sure you triple sift your flour and your salt and your baking powder really well. Powder, not power, baking powder really well. Now what I did here is once I added my cake flour into my bowl, which is 3 cups, then I went ahead and added my salt and my baking powder. Now, when you have in your blueberries, which I forgot to mention earlier, you want to also make sure that you add a little bit of that cake flour to your blueberries. Now, when you add flour to your blueberries, when you're using them in a baking product, this prevents your ingredients from sinking down to the bottom, whether it's nuts or dried fruit or fresh fruit. Tossing them in a little flour helps hold their shape in their position once you mix it into your batter. So as you can see, my blueberries are well coated here. Now I'm about to add my other dry ingredients, which is my salt. Now, one mistake that I was about to do and mess up this whole recipe, I was about to add in 1 teaspoon of salt. But luckily, and I thank God for catching me before I added all of that in there. So when I realized, nope, you don't want to add 1 teaspoon of salt, I went ahead and used my half teaspoon and I measured out inside there 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Just 1/4, which was half of the teaspoon that I had there. And I added it into my dry ingredients. Now, after I added my 1/4 teaspoon of salt, I was able to add my 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now sometimes when you're baking, you got to make sure there's no distractions. I had a phone call and that caused me to lose my concentration and making sure my measurements were right. So I'm very thankful that it was brought to my attention on what I was doing. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for working with me. So now I'm adding my baking powder, as you can see. And you can, at this point, sift all of this together so that you can have it. But what I did is a quick, easy method. I went ahead and just got a little fork and I kind of just made sure that was all incorporated well. And it's almost acted as a sift because the fork, it works really well in mixing up your dry ingredients. Now I put my mixer back on and I'm going to rotate in thirds. I put approximately 1/3 of my dry ingredients into my wet ingredients and allowing that to mix. And there I received another phone call and I had to make sure I didn't have any more distractions. I should have left my cell phone in the other room, but I kept it close by in case I got a call from my daughter or my kids from school. You want to rotate between the sour cream and your flour when incorporating it into your wet ingredients. You're going to go back and forth. You're going to do your flour first, then sour cream, and then you go sour, then you do flour, sour cream, and you want to make sure that your flour doesn't go everywhere. So you want to make sure that your mixer is at a good enough speed where you can incorporate it but without having a big poof of flour everywhere, like I said earlier. As you can see, I added my last portion of my sour cream into my mixture, and I'm just letting this mix all together really well. And then of course I turn off my mixer to make sure I scrape down the sides. I added the remainder of my flour into my mixing bowl, and everything was well incorporated. It was nice. I like the consistency of the batter, and I'll let that mix for about good 2 minutes. You don't want to over mix your batter, of course, because that will cause the cake to have not a nice fluffy consistency you're going to look for when the cake is finished baking. So after I mixed it, then I forgot to show you how I added my blueberries, but instead of mixing it, you're going to fold in your blueberries, and you can see them kind of puckered up in the batter there, and I just gently fold them because I don't want them to break, turning my cake batter into a purpley color. So with my baking spray, now you can do it the old-fashioned way with using the your Crisco vegetable shortening and your flouring method. Go right ahead. I did something a little bit quick and easy. Of course, you can find that at any grocery store, and just do the whole spray method. After you coat all your pans really well, this batter makes a very large portion, and because this particular cake pan does not hold all the batter, I went ahead and I also floured and sprayed my smaller cake pan, and you just want to make sure that your cake mixture is evenly distributed throughout the pan. Now just kind of smooth out the top, and then I'm also going to give it a little shake and shimmy to kind of make sure that there's no air bubbles if possible. You want to shake it around and kind of bang it down a little bit. Like I said, make sure no air pockets are inside your cake batter. Now I'm also going to add and do the same thing to my smaller cake pan, and now I'm going to place it into the oven. Now that heat kind of hit me in the face because that 325, woo, you get a quick facial right there. Went ahead and I added my small pan in the oven and let those bake for an hour and 10 to 15 minutes. Now while my cake and everything is baking, this is my opportunity to kind of clean up and sanitize and get any of the flour, any cake batter that may have spread. I have my little soapy bleach water here, as well as my spick and span antibacterial spray. I know you can probably just stick with the bleach, but hey, double dose, it won't hurt you. I clean off my whole mixer, making sure I get all around the crevices. And as you can see, there was a little bit of cake batter that splattered on the top. I just kind of make sure this is my whole kitchen routine when I'm cooking. I like to try to wash and wipe and clean as I cook because I don't like to wait till the last minute. I just pull a lot of my items out. Flour can splatter everywhere. You can see I took my ring off. I did have it on when I was baking, but most of the time in most of my videos you'll see me remove my ring. My hand wasn't directly into the batter, so that's why I did not remove it at that particular time. But I just try to give everything a quick wipe down and sanitize, and just kind of make sure that everything is nice and clean and fresh before I start the next step. And when you have a small kitchen like me, you want to make sure that your kitchen is nice and clean. Wiping everything down. Dust and oil does accumulate into our kitchen when you're frying and cooking, just like you do in restaurants. So just try to make sure you wipe everything down on a regular basis. Now, I started with the glaze. After all that cleaning, I have my leftover lemon zest as well as lemon juice. This is about 1/8 of a cup of lemon juice that was squeezed, and I'm using some of my powder. So this is powdered sugar for the glaze. Now, if you want, you can use less powdered sugar. I'm not quite for sure how much to use. You just pretty much eyeball it. I would say 1 to 2 cups. It depends on how thin you want your glaze, or how thick you want it. This was a pretty thick glaze that I had to drizzle over the cake. So I'm using approximately maybe 1.5 cups of powdered sugar. And I just kind of use a whisk to whisk this all together. Now, once this is whisked all together, if you happen to notice that there are a little bit of lumps in your glaze like there is here, which is no problem either, you can go ahead and just nuke it in the microwave for about 10 to 15 seconds. This will help warm up the juice and loosen up those clumps that may have accumulated with your glaze. After 10 to 15 seconds, then it is time. It has been a good hour, and you can see I have my little autumn decorations out, my rug and my little towel there, but I removed the smaller cake pan from the oven because that one didn't take long to bake, not as long as the big one. Now, I should have used gloves, but because this pan was so small, I went ahead and just used quick method, my fingers. Of course, children, if you are watching, make sure you have adult supervision and do not try that at home. And do not try that without adult supervision. Preferably use a mitt. I flipped it out, and as you can see, my cake looks so pretty. It's nice and small. I went ahead and poked some holes in it because I wanted all that lemon juice to get all the way through that cake as possible. You could poke as many holes as you want. You can see the blueberry poking out through the top there. And I bring my bowl a little bit closer, and this is where the powerful moment happens. That glaze is going to seep through those holes. It is going to go through that cake. This is so delicious. This whole cake, I'm telling you, this recipe is going to be the perfect crowd pleaser. And after I put my glaze on there, I went ahead and had to cut a piece of this. Now, of course, as a whole, you want to make sure that the cake cool off a little bit, but I figured it cooled off enough. I cut my little piece, and it is so delicious. It was so moist, and that glaze really enhanced that lemony flavor. Now, an idea you could do is you can also try using a blueberry glaze versus a lemon glaze, which I may feature in my next video. But you can see the texture. It is nice, thick, and moist. It's light and fluffy. And by the time I had everything else done, you can see my cake came out the oven. Nice golden brown. Well done all the way through. It was finished at 1 hour and 15 minutes. And I'm using a little cardboard doily here. Like I said, this cake was for a customer. So instead of putting it on a plate, I used a cardboard doily. Flipped it over. And voila, it came out, but there was unfortunately a little piece of the cake that stuck, just a little piece where you can see that blueberry. But look how big those blueberries were. Look how they just burst like big old giant pieces of confetti through that cake. That flour, when you coat your blueberries, help it go throughout the cake, not just all in one location sinking to the bottom. Now I went ahead and used my spatula and kind of pulled it out so that way I can kind of patch it on there. But this cake is so good. You can use this at a party, potluck, especially now we're hitting the fall season. It is perfect for the holiday. My whole house was smelling like delicious lemon and blueberries. I mean, this is such Such a delicious cake. Now I had to go and bring this into the dining room area and kind of have better lighting. But this is where you want to drizzle your glaze. Ooh, look at it. Look at that. See how that glaze just kind of oozes all the way down? Mmm. Almost put you in a diabetic coma just looking at it. Ooh, I hope anybody that has diabetes do not try this cake. And I just hope all those who are not diabetic, take your time and eating this. That sugar, that moistness, that cake. Ooh, Just look at how pretty it is. I mean, you couldn't even see it that close. I had to bring it closer. Look at it. All that glaze. So, if you really like this recipe and you like this video, click like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you share this video. Make sure you leave a comment. Let me know how you like this video. Let me know how your recipe came out. You can also follow me on Facebook and on Instagram. I am working on getting a Twitter page, so you can follow me there for all those who love Twitter. So, like I say always, thank you for watching and God bless.